While global headlines are dominated by conflicts in Europe and the Middle East, a humanitarian catastrophe of unprecedented proportions is unfolding in Sudan. We are witnessing what experts describe as the world's largest displacement crisis and a hunger emergency that threatens to consume an entire generation. Since April 2023, the power struggle between rival military factions has turned urban centers into battlefields and rural breadbaskets into scorched earth. Despite the staggering numbers, over 15,000 dead and millions on the brink of starvation, the international response remains muted. Today, we peel back the layers of this silent war to understand why Sudan is starving and why the world has largely looked away from a nation in freefall. To understand the famine, we must understand the fire. The conflict is a brutal power struggle between the Sudanese armed forces, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, led by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo. Once allies in a 2021 coup, their alliance shattered over disagreements on how the RSF would be integrated into the national army. This is not just a political dispute, it is a total war for control over Sudan's vast resources, including gold and agricultural land. As both sides dig in, the civilian population has become the primary victim, caught between heavy artillery in Khartoum and ethnically motivated violence in the Darfur region. Sudan is currently the site of the most significant movement of displaced people on the planet. Over 10 million people have been forced to flee their homes, some multiple times. Roughly 8 million are internally displaced, seeking refuge in overcrowded schools and camps within Sudan, while 2 million have crossed borders into neighboring Chad, Egypt, and South Sudan. These host nations, already grappling with their own economic and food security challenges, are struggling to cope with the influx. For many Sudanese families, the journey is a desperate gamble through active combat zones, where they face the constant threat of robbery, sexual violence, and recruitment by armed groups. Starvation in Sudan is not an accidental byproduct of war. It is being used as a deliberate tool of control. Farming cycles have been decimated as farmers are either killed, displaced, or unable to afford seeds and fuel. In the Gezira state, once Sudan's agricultural heartland, irrigation systems have been sabotaged and grain stores looted. Both the SAF and RSF have been accused of blocking humanitarian aid convoys, using food as leverage to demand loyalty or weaken enemy-held territories. Today, over 25 million people, more than half the population, face acute food insecurity. In many regions, people have been reduced to eating leaves and soil just to survive. Sudan's healthcare system has effectively ceased to exist in conflict zones. Approximately 70 to 80% of hospitals in the hardest-hit areas are non-functional due to direct shelling, occupation by military forces, or a total lack of medical supplies. Doctors and nurses are working under extreme duress, often without electricity or clean water. This collapse has paved the way for a secondary crisis, the spread of preventable diseases. Outbreaks of cholera, measles, and malaria are rising, while the lack of basic maternal care means that thousands of women are giving birth in life-threatening conditions. Without functioning clinics, even minor injuries become death sentences. International monitors use the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, to measure hunger. Sudan is now seeing regions enter Phase 5, the technical definition of famine. In the Zamzam camp in North Darfur, the situation is particularly dire. One child is estimated to be dying every 2 hours from malnutrition-related causes. Famine is not just a word. It is a specific, horrific threshold where starvation, disease, and death reach a tipping point. Despite these clear indicators, the famine declaration is often delayed by political sensitivities, even as local communities and international aid agencies sound the alarm that the window to prevent a total mass fatality event is closing. Why is a crisis of this magnitude receiving so little attention? Experts point to several factors. First is media fatigue, where audiences and newsrooms are saturated with coverage from Gaza and Ukraine. Second, the Sudanese government has made it incredibly difficult for international journalists to obtain visas and travel to the front lines, leading to a blackout of visual evidence. Third, there is a lack of high-level diplomatic pressure from major global powers, some of whom have complex ties to the warring generals. Without viral footage or strategic geopolitical urgency for the West, Sudan has become a peripheral issue, leaving millions to suffer in the shadows of the global stage. The situation in Sudan is desperate, but it is not yet hopeless. Experts argue that an immediate ceasefire is the only way to facilitate a massive, cross-border humanitarian operation to reach the starving. International donors must bridge the massive funding gap. Currently, the UN's humanitarian response plan for Sudan is less than 40% funded. Beyond aid, there must be a concerted global effort to hold those responsible for war crimes and the weaponization of hunger accountable. For informed citizens, the first step is breaking the silence. By demanding that our leaders prioritize Sudan on the diplomatic agenda, we can help ensure that never again actually means something for the people of Sudan.